Welcome to Becoming a Cook. I'm Charlie Wetzel. Today I want to teach you how to make chicken chili. This is a great dish for a party. I've done it for Super Bowl for years, and it's really pretty simple to do. I've already cut up my veggies for this dish. I've got 4 medium onions, 2 large bell peppers, and 4 celery stalks, which I've chopped up, plus 12 cloves of garlic, chopped up, and about an equivalent amount of jalapenos. So this is ready to go, but I need to grind up my chicken before we can get started. You can use a roaster or a fryer for this. A roaster has a little more flavor. A fryer is a little bit more tender. They both are great for chili. Sometimes when I do this, I do a single bird, and that's kind of a normal batch for me. This is really a double batch. It's got 2 chickens, and the amounts that I gave you on the veggies are for a double batch as well. I've done another video on how to bone out a chicken. So I'm gonna do this really fast, and if you don't know how to do this, you can tune into the other video. If you don't want to go through the trouble of boning out the chicken yourself, you could use 5 pounds of chicken, ground chicken that you can get at the grocery store, or 5 pounds of turkey, or a combination of them. So I've got all the bones and the skin off of this. I need to cut this in strips because the throat of the grinder is fairly small. If you're practiced at cutting up a chicken, and my recommendation is that you become practiced, you can see this doesn't really take very long. The stock is on. It hasn't come to a boil yet, so I'm listening for that. Meanwhile, I want to grind the chicken. So I've set this up with the coarse die, which is the one with the big holes, because I like a chili that's got a little bit of a coarser grind. I find that ground chicken from the store is very fine and it breaks apart, and even the turkey can be finer than I want it. You'll notice that I kept one hand clean and dry and the other one dirty and wet. That way you don't contaminate anything you're working with. I thought I was gonna have to use this, which typically I do, to push it down, but if the pieces are in strips that are thin enough, you don't even need this. If you're a serious home cook or a baker, I recommend that you get a KitchenAid mixer. There are all kinds of attachments like this. They do pasta makers. Obviously it's great for whipping egg whites, making cakes, that sort of a thing. And no, I don't get any payment from KitchenAid. When I take this off, there's gonna be a little bit of chicken left in here. And I'll just check and see, as long as it's not, the chunks aren't too big, I can just throw it in here. We're ready to cook. Sometimes when I make this chili, if I've made stock ahead of time and I have some chicken fat that it has solidified on the top of the stock in the refrigerator, I'll pull that off and I'll actually use that. I don't have that this time, so I'm gonna use a little bit of olive oil. I just want enough in here to be able to saute my vegetables. I'm letting this get up to a little bit of heat, and then I'm going to add my garlic and my jalapenos. I always keep pickled jalapeno slices in the house. It's one of my staples. Could I use fresh jalapenos and dice those up? Absolutely, and those would be fine. But I go through times where I'll use jalapenos and then not use them. They'll go bad. This way, I've always got jalapenos ready to go. All right, veggies in. If you are uncertain about how to cut up these veggies, I've done videos on cutting up celery, onions, and bell peppers. Just check on the channel, or you can look for the Veggie Prep playlist. So while those cook, I'm going to open up a can of diced tomatoes. This is a 28-ounce can. If I were doing a single chicken batch, I would use a can that, I think there's a 15-ounce. It's either 13, 14, or 15 ounces. I would use that instead. With these veggies, I just want them to get bright in color. They don't have to cook too horribly much, but they're better if they're sauteed a little bit rather than starting with them raw. I'm cooking these on high heat, but the temperature really dropped when I put all those in there. You can see the color on these. These are nice and bright. The onions need just maybe another 30 seconds or a minute. Next in, all my chicken. I'm going to give this a bit of a stir, but the reality is that this chicken's going to be boiled, not sauteed. And then tomatoes. This is getting juice and all. We're going to add chicken stock to it as well. I've turned up my stock, and the reason I'm doing that is I want to skim it one last time. And also, when you turn the heat up like this, the fat tends to roll over to one side, and I'd prefer to have less fat as I put stock in here. That's about a quart of liquid that I've added so far. If you want to do this a little bit more easily in a faster method, you could buy your meat ground already. You could buy chicken stock in a container and just add that. It won't taste as good, but you can do it that way. You need to add some more liquid. But now we're going to give it the stuff that makes it chili. First, chili powder, ground cumin, and I want more cumin than chili powder in terms of my ratios. Turmeric, which gives it a nice color. Salt, and black pepper. So I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at the color. The color's not bad. I can use just a little bit more chili powder, a little more cumin. And because there's no such thing as too much garlic, a little bit of garlic powder. I'm going to let this cook for a few minutes before I taste it because the chicken's not completely cooked yet, and I don't want to be tasting raw chicken. I'm going to cover this, and I'm going to turn the temperature down just a little bit. So you'll notice I didn't measure anything. My recommendation to you would be to go ahead and add the seasonings that I mentioned, and then taste it, and then just keep adding. You just have to remember you can't take away to kind of see where you are. I'd say this has been going about 10 minutes. As I stir this, I'm going to break up any pieces of meat where it has kind of stuck together. And the reason you do that is you really want the flavor to get to all that meat. If it's in a bundle like that, it has no seasoning on the inside. So let me taste this and see how we're doing on our spices. Salt's pretty good. It doesn't have a lot of spice, but there's a little bit on the back end. It's got plenty of turmeric. You can see the yellow. I think it could use a little more chili and a little more cumin. One of the nice things about a recipe like this is you can do it to the taste that you think is great. I feel like this could use a little bit more chicken flavor, so I'm going to drop 2 chicken bouillon cubes in here just to get that flavor a little bit richer. If you do this with turkey, it's going to need to cook a little bit longer. Chicken is very, very tender, so it cooks quickly. So the last thing I need to do for this is thicken it a little bit. I read many, many years ago that the traditional way to thicken chili is to add cornmeal. And I've done that before, but you end up adding a lot of cornmeal, and it gives it some body, but it doesn't really thicken it per se because the cornmeal doesn't dissolve. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix some cornstarch with a little bit of water into a slurry, and I'll put that in, and that'll just give it a little bit of body. And as usual, I'm not doing this scientifically. I am just eyeballing it. One thing I should note, when you do this, do it with cold water, because if you do hot water, it's going to clump up. So I'm just using my finger in this because I can feel where the cornstarch is, I can feel where the lumps are, and I want to get all those out before I pour that in. The lumps are gone, and I'm going to stir this while I do it because pretty much when it hits boiling liquid, it thickens. So now this has got a little bit of body. I could add more cornstarch and water, I could add more cornmeal, but I don't think we need it because we're going to put other goodies in this and it's just going to be fine. When I was a kid, I really didn't like chili. But the first time I had chili without beans, I thought, oh, I kind of like this. It was the beans that put me off, and in particular, it's red kidney beans. So when I make my chili, I don't do beans. There are times when I've made it an option for anybody who wants to do it. So with this kind of chili, I would do white beans, Great Northern beans. In our household, we don't really have any takers for the beans, so I'm not going to do it. This chili's been cooking about 30 minutes, and it is ready to go. So this one, I'm going to make for Stephanie. Sometimes I'll put the cilantro in it when I'm still cooking it, but it turns brown. So I would rather put it on top. It looks nice, and you can put as much as you want. Stephanie will also want some sour cream. and for sure, some green onions. I think maybe a little bit of cheddar cheese for me, and then cilantro on top, and then I need some jalapenos on mine. If you're looking to do something, especially during the colder months, that is good comfort food, that's a great party food, you could serve this as a dip if you put less liquid in it and just put scooping chips by it. You can serve it out as a meal. You could do it as an appetizer. It's really pretty versatile. As long as you're willing to do your own grinding and make your own stock, it's economical. It's really pretty simple. Chop some veggies, throw some meat in, season it, and you've got chili. Thanks for joining me today on Becoming a Cook. That's good stuff.